Hello and welcome to the Movie Moolah podcast. As always, I am your host, Ben Yenny, and with me today is Brandon Bond. Brandon is another entrepreneur in the media space, as well as former head of a management company, a sales company, I suppose, and a new form of distribution platform that we'll get into later. Brandon, did I forget anything?
No, that was good. It's a faster summary than I could give. Yeah, I just a little quick background. I was obsessed with film and videotaping, and I kind of became the de facto camcorder user in the house, right? Pre-teens, my dad just started going, "You want to film it? You film it. I don't want to do it." So started doing that. Wanted to go to film school, let the real world talk me out of it. Parents, friends, family were like, "Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that? There's no money." I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're right. I don't know anybody. I'm not in New York. I'm not in LA. I can't do this." So, changed degrees, got out into the real world, worked at a bank for a decade. I was an operations analyst, so spent a lot of time looking at subjective data, objective data, doing different types of analyses. But all the while, right, I was still staying engaged, right? Like when I was in college, I had a roommate who was in film school. I helped him with a lot of his stuff. And then after all that, I got really burned out, and on the side, right, I started doing weddings and then music videos and short films, and was able to thankfully pivot out of that, and moved into doing this full time. I initially wanted to be a DP, realized that in Houston, where I'm based, there weren't any producers, really, not enough, that knew what they were doing, right? I was tired of going on film sets and seeing who's running this, what's happening here, right? And spending a decade in the corporate world, I was very used to like structures, plans. Why are there not contingency? So I just kind of shifted over into producing, and through that process, just started identifying gaps, right? And just kind of expanded. So I guess an entrepreneur in the media space is an apt summary of that.
Yeah, I think we have more in common than at least I realized. I did go to film school, much to my parents' chagrin, but after film school, I actually spent a bit of time selling insurance and doing that sort of work, and I had a ton of weird side jobs while I lived in San Francisco while I was building my representation company. And eventually I was able to make it my full-time gig and was significantly happier about it, even if I made less money. Um, and that sounds a lot like what you just summarized as well. So it's a hustle I think most of us producers really understand because we've all kind of been there, and a lot of those of us who are producers did it because we realized that there wasn't anybody doing this and it needed doing. I don't think pretty much anybody goes into film to be a producer.
No,
Um, yeah.
no, because producers are always the bad guys, right? Especially when you're coming at it from the artistic angle, right? The producers are the suits, they're the money guys, they're the rule guys, they're the contract guy, right? Right. You're looking
Yeah.
snazzy yourself. Um, and when I was starting out, I was directing and DPing, right? And so producers were always the guys telling me, "No, we can't do that. That's not in the budget. That's going to take, and it was always like, I hate these guys, right?" But, I quickly started to appreciate, when I worked with a good producer, like, oh, right. Oh, right. So there is some good to it. And then slowly, just like, no, producers really can make or break something from an administrative perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a really key component of creating that type of, you know, thing. I mean, as we both deal with sales and distribution, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
such simple things as not getting the right wording in a contract with an actor can destroy a deal, right?
Entirely. And it can also, not having that wording in it can also completely destroy all revenue for your film, even if you have already made it and spent the money on it. It's a really easy and costly mistake.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, completely agree. Um, it is interesting to be on what I guess a lot of people would perceive as the villain side of the equation, but it's really more, but all the good producers I know, and even I almost said even the good producers reps I know, but that's one person and they're in this room. Um, is it's really more about being a bridge and being something of a wall as well between the two sides and being true neutral. And it's not always an easy job to do that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think, philosophically, one of the things, because over time, I'm finding myself kind of producing less.
mhm,
And um, as far as like on set production, right? And I'm at a point now where I can be picky about that, right? I can
mhm,
choose which directors I want to work with. And, it's not about like gig to gig to gig anymore, right?
mhm,
But one of my biggest philosophies that I always talk to directors about is it's not my job to get involved in creative, right? And I think there's a
mhm,
lot of producers that make that mistake as they get really heavy handed in, right? Of course, I'm going to give feedback. I'm going to do this, right? But, um, at the end of the day, if the director wants to do it, I'm going to let them do it in most cases,
so
right?
long as it's in the budget, most of the
Right,
time.
right. And but to your point about being that kind of, intermediary, so to speak, or being that, it's almost like a firewall, right?
Mhm,
Like you're kind of the translator between the business and the creative, right? That's how I've always kind of viewed it. And
mhm,
I've always told directors my job is, to get you what you need as we go through development, as it goes through production. We kind of build this thing so that when we get to set, I can put you in a nice creative cocoon,
mhm,
and then I will guard that cocoon. I'm the one outside of the cocoon dealing with all the fires, dealing with all the issues. So it's not bleeding into set, right?
mhm,
When I'm on set, I'm rarely actually down by the cameras.
mhm,
I don't go down to set. I don't sit behind the monitors. I mean, I'll go watch big scenes or key scenes or things, where it's an expensive shot, of course, right? But for the most part, I kind of stay away, right? I tend to kind of hang out in the room with the DITs and the data wranglers and just kind
mhm,
of stay in there. People know they can come talk to me if they need to, but stay out of the way. Let the art do its thing.
mhm,
Um, So yeah, I mean, I think, and that was something I had to learn over time too, right? Was that it is, we do get placed on the villain side of the equation a lot, but
mhm,
really we're trying to get the completely not creative people and the creative people to speak the same language and march towards the same goal.
mhm. That's totally true. I don't think it's the way I positioned it as a rep in the past is I'm basically a shark against bigger sharks. Um, and the philosophy kind of still applies here, but it's less adversarial than that. It is really more about facilitating and letting your creatives exist in a bubble where they can be creative, but also further the end goals of the movie, which is mainly getting it made. Um, because if they don't, they're not going to be able to eat, and no one is. And that's basically it. So it's not, being a producer is really more about being an enabler than anything else. And at least that's my opinion of it. But yeah, so shifting gears just a little bit. How often do you actually go to set?
Ooh, now I probably only go like this year. I've only been on set on two different shoots. Um, most in those two shoots, I was there for the entirety of the shoot. Um, but most of the time I just kind of pop in, and it really depends on my involvement, right? And it depends on the scale of the production too, right? If they
Mm-hmm.
have an AD that I'm confident in, and there's a solid line producer, UPM on set, or then I don't really feel the need to be there.
Yeah.
So it just really depends. But like I said, I'm kind of shifting more into EPing than
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hands-on producing. So my presence on sets is dropping, but when I do go on set, I try to be there, for the entirety. Like there's one shoot in June, or I'm sorry, June, in February, where, it was really skeleton as far as like production support, right? A lot of the money went into the camera crew and other things, right? For
Mhm.
what goes on screen. And normally I kind of push back against that, but it was, with the exception of 2 days, it was a 16-day shoot. 14 of the days were in one location.
Oh,
So
that's nice.
it simplifies it, right?
Yeah.
There's not a bunch of logistics, it wasn't we were able to load in the day before we started filming at that location and just keep it there. And so I was kind of like, well, that's fine. We can kind of scrimp back on this. But by default, that kind of turns you into now you're transpo manager, right? Now
Oh yeah.
you're dealing with all these things that normally I would buck against. So it just really depends on the project.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you're in the EP role, there are like maybe 2 or 3 reasons an EP actually comes to set. Um, one of which is it's a big, expensive, cool shot that they want to be there for.
Yeah.
2 is there's a celebrity there they want to meet. And 3 is things are going terribly wrong. And they have to be there to kick the line producer into gear. The first two, if you're on any film of scale, that's pretty much something you're always going to have to deal with. And our job isn't that fun most of the time, so we do take advantage of those, or at least I do. But that last one, it's a problem. And it's really your goal to not have the executive producer or the studio people on set. Oh, I did forget one. The executive producer will come to set if there's a studio visit. They will
Yeah.
always be there, and they will be acting as that firewall, basically. So those are really the only 4 reasons that we show up, um, at least in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I do kind of miss it though. I was actually really, really happy to get a cameo in Tim Travers. So that was super fun and a first. Um, so I mentioned you're in distribution and sales, and we'll go into your platform after this, but right now, the position I know you in best is that you are a liaison to, I'm not going to name names, I'm just going to say large buyers. Um, because I don't want to flood your inbox too much.
Sure.
But the So how did you end up in that position?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So my first kind of exposure to it was with some music videos that I did. They had this one group in particular had some really good management,
Mm-hmm.
and they were able to, through connections that they have, right, they were able to get in touch with the company. And I don't know if this company still exists. This is back 2014, 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
But the company that used to build, whatever was displaying on the Walmart TVs and the Target TVs and the Best Buy TVs, right? That was actually, at least back then, was something that was actually streamed, right? It was sent through a network to the
Mm-hmm.
TVs. And they had been approached about getting the music videos basically licensed for that platform to be shown at Targets and Best Buys and stuff like that. And of course, they're musicians, they book tours, they record albums, they get that. And even their managers were like, look, I don't know what this is. And they turned to me, and I was like, yeah, let's I'll help you with this. I did a lot of negotiations when I was at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, yeah, sure, send it over. Let's look at the contract and let's figure it out. Right. And so I learned a lot of trial by fire that way, because I didn't really know what the hell I was doing either. But that really opened my eyes to, like, whoa, do these things, like, because back when you're first starting out, you're thinking like, I got to get into theaters, or I got to get it on Netflix, or else I'm a failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Amazon Prime was kind of coming into its heyday at that point too
Mm-hmm.
for indie filmmakers, right? Like you could almost guarantee a pretty good return just getting it on Amazon VOD, right?
Yeah.
You could
Was that in the era before anybody could upload to Prime subscription
that
video on
was
demand SVOD?
that was right around the time it was getting started, because when I looked into it initially, you couldn't, but then you could.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty right in that same time frame. So that really got, so just the fact that, wait, these music videos can monetize, but these other projects I've worked on can't. And so
Mm-hmm.
that really got me to start just kind of sniffing around for kind of alternative distribution. And then I started working for this production company, and we did I guess it was a reality show. I would call it more of an educational show than a reality show. And then that was just something that was posted on YouTube, because it was just, it was paid for by this company, and they just wanted it as an educational resource. But we had some names in it. And so the Sportsman and the Outdoors channels came knocking to us, the production company, and said, we want to license this and put it on the air. We want to do a broadcast license. And fortunately, and I was the director and supervising producer on that shoot. My boss, the executive producer, had spent a lot of time in LA, right? He directed or produced, like, the very early Joe Rogan, Zach Galifianakis, those early Netflix specials.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the producers on those. So he, like, lit up when that happened. And he was like, oh, I can do this. And he kind of showed me the ropes on all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we negotiated a few different deals there. And then, I just kind of took that and started looking at films. And then, of course, yeah, the Amazon VOD thing was
Mm-hmm.
huge while it lasted. I mean, as you know, it takes a lot more marketing effort than it used to, right?
It takes a lot more marketing effort, and it's a lot harder to get anything on Prime subscription than it used to be. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And and so the company started because I and others were just getting really frustrated with the lack of options for smaller filmmakers, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it was like, basically, oh, well, you can do Bitmax, right? And nothing against their business model.
Mm-hmm.
I think it works for certain people, just like all business models have their purpose, right? But that just, so we kind of thought like there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
And what forced us to start the company was we were, I produced a movie called The Reading, which brought Mo-Nique from Meet the Parkers, Mo-Nique Hicks.
Mm.
And we knew that we were getting offers before we had even mildly come close to finishing the film, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, once it was in production, like while we were on set, I'm getting emails from whoever, so and so, whatever, right? And I had been burned by distributors in the past, as a lot of people are, especially when you don't know what you're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you get into a smaller film festival, and then all of a sudden a distributor approaches you. It's like, wow, I didn't think a distributor would be here, right? And you go to their website and they've got 300 films in your genre, and you're like, wow. And you buy into it, right? You buy it and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, this is so cool. I never thought this would happen. I thought I'd have to put it on YouTube or whatever, right? And you take it hook, line, and sinker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we it was already that was coming out of the woodwork, right? Like literally hours after that IMDb thing updated, because our production supervisor, flipped the switch, they start crawling out of the woodwork.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided, what, we need to kind of formalize what we've just kind of been doing as producers, like
Mm-hmm.
more like P&D, I guess, is what we were
Yeah.
doing. And we decided, let's formalize this. Let's formalize this and let's protect this project, because we don't want to get roped into anything snaky. And through that process, and it has a lot to do with the fact that we have Mo-Nique in it, and Mo-Nique was kind of starting to pop back up in the media because of the Netflix situation and other
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? And so we were getting a lot of attraction to the project, and so a lot of doors just kind of opened for us
Mm-hmm.
because of that. And we were very, I don't like burning bridges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you have to be very kind of tactful when you're going through this process, especially as a new company,
Mm-hmm.
especially the types of people we were meeting with, right? I mean, it's like getting thrown into the deep end with no floaties
Yeah.
on, because we never really had that kind of growth phase where we were having to go to markets and network and all
Mm-hmm.
of this. I mean, it's not lost on me that we kind of got lucky, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this business is luck, right? Like it's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's when people say it's a lot about who you know, that's not a joke.
No, it's almost entirely about who you know, really. I mean, the fact that
Right.
you started with a film that had a big star at exactly the right time makes a gigantic difference in your uh in your ability to scale quickly and the level of distribution you're going to play at. Because the only way you can email a lot of these people is if you've already emailed them and already
Right.
talked to them, or if somebody they already know makes a warm introduction. That's about it.
Right.
And it's a and once you have that first bigger hit, it becomes significantly easier to try to get on there, which is part of how the traditional sales and distribution model soldiers on.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing I just wanted to point out too is when you start getting to some of these organizations that are big, and
Mm-hmm.
you and I have kind of talked about this before, where you know you and I may both have connections to the same platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to get wildly different answers, right? And one of us may not get an answer at all for
Mm-hmm.
the exact same thing, right? And so, especially when you start moving into having connections at larger platforms, it really becomes complicated, and every platform operates a little bit differently, right? Like some
Mm-hmm.
share a ton of information, right? So anybody in the film division and film acquisitions is going to know you're talking. Other companies are going to be like, if you're not talking to anybody else besides that one person may be the only person who knows you're talking to big streamer X, right? And
That's
if they
totally true. Yeah.
leave, which a lot of us experienced in 2020, 2021 with these massive restructures,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of back to square one, right? You don't know anybody there anymore, and no one will answer your emails.
Yeah. No, we've all been subject to that at some point or another. But the good thing about people, just the amount people move around in the industry, is at least every once in a while you'll deal with somebody who you become relatively close with at a significantly smaller distributor, and then they'll take a decent position of power at the exact place you want to be. But they'll remember you if you treated them well, which is part of why you don't want to burn any bridges, and you don't always want to be a smartass when somebody's being a jerk.
Right.
That one took me a while to learn. But
Yes.
tell me a little bit more about your new and emerging distribution platform.
Sure. So we are we are right now in the public beta for a website called movietestscreening.com. Um, right now, we just have two films up. One is a found footage horror film. The other is a kind of midlife crisis, coming of age comedy drama.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we are going to be throwing two more up there in September, maybe three. But we're keeping the volume low right now just so the
Mm-hmm.
testers can get in there and get used to it. But what it is what it sounds like, right? Movietestscreening.com. It's a place where you can um, submit your film, and then we will run it through the test screening process, right? So but instead of in a cinema, we're doing it on a website.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that has been really key to us has been the security aspect of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as you know, this is that when people get to that phase and they start sending out all these links to everybody to trying to get a deal, that's really when the first kind of wave of piracy can
Mm-hmm.
potentially happen to you, right? And leaking before you're even released is far worse than leaking after a release.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so security was a huge component of this platform, and it's something that we've been kind of working on in the background. But you know, it, the real value that we're bringing is that we're going to give you a full breakdown of the demographics of the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And beyond what existing testing services use today, right? So not only are we going to give you an insight into their age, race, ethnicity, what part of the country do they live in? We capture a lot of data from them from an intake survey, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we use that to kind of build what the profile of your ideal person to market to is based off of more than just those demographics, right? What
Mm-hmm.
platforms do they use? How often do they use them? That type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for filmmakers that do, decide to go a DIY route, they're not just firing off blanks into the dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, of course, for distributors or sales agents, the same thing would apply, right? You're getting a little bit more targeted, data. And then, of course, with my background as an analyst, right, you're going to get a full blown kind of analytics survey. So it's not just going to be here's some graphs that shows you, how people felt about the pacing of the third act or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but going in and actually connecting those different data points and pointing out, um, potential areas to improve it, right? Like, and we do things with like character analyses, right? And one of the things that we do with the testers is we kind of break it down so that when they're answering these questions, they're separating the actor from the character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the feedback they're giving is targeted towards whether it's a character issue or an actor issue, and we help extrapolate
Mm-hmm.
and determine that, right? So for example, if there's a character that people just do not like, and then
Mm-hmm.
they're also saying in act 2 it felt really long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, well in act 2 there was that scene with that character where they're arguing with the main character, the protagonist, for 12 and a half minutes or something, right? Well, that scene's got to go,
Yeah, that's a
right?
long scene to begin with.
It's a
But
long scene. The people don't like the actor, right? So like, you might want to reapproach that.
are all of these just user self-reports, or is there some other sort of technical and API magic that you're using to track what people are, track demographics, interests, and even just like how engaged with the content they are throughout the screening process?
Yeah, sure. So we use what we call a ticket ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really what it is it is a unique code that is identified to each person, and they
Mm-hmm.
use it as a passcode, right? So all the testers, they kind of punch that in to unlock the screener and watch it, the trailer or the film, whichever it is they're doing. They also plug that into the survey data. So it serves kind of a function of, that's our anonymization, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to pull their data, their personal data, into survey results.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that ID also um, is what kind of stamps the forensic watermark, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it
Oh.
Yeah, so it is also the decryption key that runs off of a device token, right? So it's not in the stream itself. So each user ID or each ticket ID has a set number of devices, right? And we get rid of to kind of help mitigate, because there's no way to totally prevent piracy, right?
Yeah.
But to mitigate it, the process of assigning a ticket ID is manual,
Mm-hmm.
and the process of changing device registrations is manual. They have to reach out to us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we have a phone number that they can text, they can call. We have after hours kind of bots responding. They're not going to do anything, but at least it will get logged, and we can
Mm-hmm.
attack it first thing in the morning, right? Or if I'm having a sleepless night, since I don't get paid, I'm
Yeah.
gonna just check and be random and do stuff at night, maybe, right? But
We've all been there. Yeah.
but yeah, so that ticket ID kind of boom stamps that view, that session, right? And we can see how much of it they watched, if they kind of, switched it from a phone to a TV, right? So showing that it's maybe they're casting it, right? So we can see a
Mm-hmm.
lot of their behavior, we can see their completion. Um, all that sort of stuff is tracked, and we keep that a manual process, so that
Mm-hmm.
there's really no way to game it, right? And before you can get that ticket ID, you have to fill out the what we call the internally, it's basically an intake form, right?
Yeah.
You got to give us all your kind of demos and your genre preferences, and what elements of a film's marketing draws you to watch it, right? Is it the cast? Is it video reviews? Is it word of mouth? Whatever, right? um, and then the reason also it's manual, so that we can check it and be like, does this seem like a person or a robot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it someone just trying to come in and rinse repeat, and get that, because we do have incentives, right, to participate.
Yeah, that was my next question, actually. How do you... This seems like a decent time investment for the viewer, and
Oh
I think
yeah.
somebody who's, as somebody else who's been on the earlier sides of distribution, there are a lot of indie films that are out there that are crap. total and complete crap. And most people who just watch movies and aren't in the industry and aren't in an early acquisition round or a first round of a festival have no idea exactly how bad these movies are because they never got seen by people other than those people.
Right.
So if you're asking a layperson to, in a test screening, to do that, you're going to have to incentivize them somehow. And I am curious about how you do that.
Sure. So, as it stands right now, what we're doing is their ticket ID, every time it's submitted on a survey, and we, because the surveys, of course, get reviewed. And if it looks like you just clicked through, or if you completed a survey and we can see that, you clicked through it,
Mm-hmm.
well, that doesn't count, right?
Yeah.
You didn't watch it, you did it for the survey, right? But
Mm-hmm.
every successful survey that we actually verify and is good to go,
Mm-hmm.
their ticket ID is what they use to register for the survey. We use that as like a raffle ticket, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you get thrown into a pot every month with anybody else who completed a survey,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only limited by the number of surveys that are available in any given month.
Mm-hmm.
So you could, if you watched everything, like right now, you could get 4 entries, right,
Mm-hmm.
in the month of August. And then we are going to do, starting in October, November, we're going to start doing giveaways. Be that gift cards. We're talking to some of the filmmakers about maybe doing some limited edition merch.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's a good idea.
yeah, just to kind of really do that, and not just kind of massaging their egos, right? Like we're thinking about uh making shirts that say things like I'm a tastemaker or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just giving it to them once they've completed a certain number of surveys, right? It's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. So we're incentivizing it that way. And then also we are in discussions with some other companies about doing some perks across the board, right?
Mm-hmm.
So discounts to certain services. One of the things, not to kind of get derailed too much here, but after building this platform and the tech stack that we had to build over the last 2.5 years to get here,
Mm-hmm.
um, we realized like we've got what we need to allow people to do their own online screenings too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe in addition to or in place of doing a theatrical screening that you have to four wall, right? And we're talking about independent creators who are just doing the thing for the cast and crew and their friends, right? Or in their
Mm-hmm.
local city. Um, you know, um,
Crowdfunding fulfillment would be a really good thing to do too. Um,
yeah, and so marketing to those people and giving them a place that is going to that they can do it, right? Because we've already got this viewer authentication thing in place, we've already got the CDN, right? And we've already got that stuff, and so that would be an example of one of the perks, right? Is like anybody who's a tester can get 50% off on the
mm-hmm.
platform or whatever, right? um so stuff like that. But yeah, we certainly need to incentivize them.
Mm-hmm.
And and one of the things too that we're very cognizant of is we want to talk to filmmakers about ways that they would like to engage with the testers too, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's an ongoing discussion as well. But the limited edition merch is definitely one of the things that we're going to offer. And then maybe making things available to the filmmakers or to the testers from the filmmakers, like when the
Mm-hmm.
movie comes out, some sort of whatever, whether it's you know I would say a copy of the DVD, but that's showing our age. That's not really a good perk anymore as it used to be. I'd still take it, but
I mean, I have watched 3 DVDs in the last week, so that is
yeah,
is uncommon for me. But it's more uncommon for other people, I imagine. But
yeah,
yeah, no, I think you're right about. I think the biggest thing you could be doing to incentivize people is exclusive perks that are really rely more on clout. Like, this is not a one-to-one comparison, but the idea that comes to mind are the YouTube plaques. Like, you get one for 100,000, one for 250, maybe one for half and one for a mil. That, and maybe one for 10, I don't know. But the something like that is an actual tangible physical object that is exclusive to this community, there's some power in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. And that's where my head is at too, because a lot of this, you know, not to sound cheesy, but a lot of the concept behind this platform is empowering both really who our customers are for this platform, the testers and the filmmakers, right? We're empowering the filmmakers with actionable data, actionable insights. Here's your audience. Here's what they look like. Here's what platforms they watch. You know, here are some things to fix to make it even better, whatever the case may be. But also for the testers, we're empowering them with, you know, like on our site, it says, have you ever watched a film and thought, I really liked it until the ending, right? Now you can say what you didn't like about it and your feedback will be heard, right? And so just kind of giving that microphone, right, to someone who normally, you know, is just going to post their feedback maybe nowhere, right? And if they do, the filmmaker's not going to care. You know, they post a review on Amazon like, oh, I hated the middle section of the film. Well,
okay, if it's an indie filmmaker, most of them do care. I can't
they
tell
care.
you. I can't tell you how many times it's been like, this person's a jerk, because of the thing there, and I happen to agree. But frankly, a lot of times, the rating helped you no matter what. That would be another thing to think about. There is if there's any way to integrate with other public rating systems, because that is kind of how a lot of new user discovery is drawn these days. So
Yeah, and we are looking at a couple of different API integrations. That's probably going to be like a phase 2 thing next year. But we're definitely looking at APIs because there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of API access out there to get.
Yeah, and there's a lot of there's a lot of value here, and there are several other points of the value chain that I could see. I mean, I know you're only at your public beta, you said, so
Yeah. So we're still onboarding new
quite early.
testers. Yeah, we're still onboarding new testers and just kind of getting them used to it. We're not taking orders from filmmakers yet. You can certainly sign up on a waiting list and we'll let you know as soon as you can. I think we're going to actually start allowing orders next month for filmmakers.
You mean in September?
Yep. In
There's a
September.
good chance that it'll be live by the time this goes live, because we're actually recording this towards the end of August right now.
That's true. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah. Regardless, I'll drop a link for both the waiting list and to sign up as a tester in the description here, because it sounds like it has the potential to be a gigantically valuable piece of tech and piece of a filmmaker's marketing arsenal.
Yeah, and we, you know, our most basic package, which really kind of gives you the key insights like, did people like it? Are your marketing materials working? So your art, your poster, your synopsis, are they going to talk about this, right? Are they going to tell other people? Are they going to post on social media, right? And the demographic breakdown, those kind of 4 key components are even in our most basic package. And that package is going to be $2,500. And if you do, you know, if you go look, there's nobody at that price point.
No, that's very reasonable. I can understand some indie filmmakers who made a $50,000 film getting sticker shock from that, but for this service, I've seen
way higher.
Yeah. Normally in the 5 figures, but that's running a theater. But yeah. What made you want to make this platform?
You know, just being kind of shell shocked by the sticker. sometimes, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
as you know, testing is a really valuable thing. And there are certain buyers that will straight up ask you, have you tested this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
They tend to be the big boys, by the way,
right,
or big buyers, I should say. But yeah.
right. The big buyers will ask if it's tested.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tell them no, you know, if they're going to make an offer, it's going to be far below what they were
Mm-hmm.
prepared to do. If you had test data, because and what I explain to people is, and I'm sure you've talked about it on other episodes, but those guys are running a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't build a prototype in your garage and then just march that into Walmart and say you want this. They're going to say, has it gone through safety testing? Have you done market analysis, right? Oh, okay, with that data now we can make you this offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very similar, once you get to a certain price point, right,
Mm-hmm.
and a certain type of buyer, you got to have your basic product market research, and that's really what this is.
Mm-hmm.
um, and for us, for me it was just more of looking at it and kind of going, wow, right? And what really broke the straw that broke the camel's back for me was we spent, I'm not going to say the company because they gave, the feedback was good, right? But we
Mm-hmm.
spent $38,000 on a test screening that had, you know, a decent amount of participants, but they weren't asked a ton of questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of like, there's no reasonable explanation for why it costs this much other than it can, because what are you going to do about it? Right. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of just one of those things. And but constantly, so when we started doing the research on it, we couldn't really find a whole lot out there even under $10,000.
Yeah.
And so just kind of that got my wheels turning, right? um and I just started digging into it and realized I can I can build something that can turn a profit for a far smaller cost point.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was back in 2019, late 2019, early 2020. And I've been slowly kind of chipping away at it ever since. And now this year is where it really got a lot of momentum. Um,
So this is all bootstrapped?
this is all bootstrapped. Yeah.
Oof. Um, Jargon note, self-finance. There isn't institutional financing behind it. But that's impressive. I used to work in tech. I was the CMO of a SaaS company, software as a service company for project management for the film industry. I have an idea of what tech spends are here and the time it takes, and the fact that you've done this in 2.5 years for something like this, where video and security are integral, is an impressive feat in and of itself. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been bootstrapped for sure. And this year was really the first year where I finally got to that point to where accessible funds and what that were that kind of lined up, and it was like, okay, we can now make the push, right?
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, bootstrapped. I did have investors
Mm-hmm.
initially, but we never formalized anything. And about 6 weeks ago, I told them, I'm good. Thanks, but no thanks. We haven't signed anything. You haven't really done anything.
They didn't give the money yet?
No.
Then yeah, I mean,
Well, they were really focused on, like, because they wanted to build a larger family of products, which is understandable, right? And they
yeah.
wanted this to be their first one. But we were getting so wrapped up in, let's talk about the brand identity for the overall brand, and then we'll focus on the branding for this site. And I'm like, what?
No,
No,
it's
no.
I still fall back to lean methodology, even though it has
Yeah.
it has its fault. It has its failure points, as evidenced by the supply chain issues we've had recently. But I still think in terms of building a software business, it's about the best you can. Which is just to say, start with a single product, get traction there, then expand and figure out how you're going to expand and better monetize. That
Right.
was the not jargon way of saying what I just said. There is,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
And the one thing I just wanted to say is I 100% agree with you. And what I told them was, the day where I told them like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm moving on. I'm not going to wait for this branding crap. Right. Was, what you got, because we were ready to launch, we were getting ready to launch beta end of July, early August. Right. And it was in July where they were like, well, maybe we should push it off to like October, November. I'm like, and no, you guys aren't understanding how much this has cost me, right? Like we need to get going, and there's no reason to wait, right? And so they were like, oh, we need to do the overall branding and think about the larger thing. And I said, what you guys are basically doing, not that I've built the next Google, but imagine if, when they were about to launch the Google search webpage and they said, hold on, we need to think about the branding for Android phones in a decade, right? We might be doing phones, so let's think about Android branding before we launch the search bar. And I said, if you think that this is different than that, give me an example. And they said, well, Adobe with all the Adobe products. And I said, those were all individual software before Adobe bought them up. They were owned by Macromedia. And Macromedia didn't even start all those. They kind of bought them off piecemeal in the 90s. And then Macromedia sold to Adobe. So I was like, this is a horrible comparison because you guys think now you're just some big Titan buyer, and you're not.
No, you have to start as the scrappy asshole who's going to go and do something different.
Right.
And no, I completely agree. I'm not surprised to hear this story, if I'm honest. I've had similar experiences. It might have made sense if these people already, like, if they were like IAC, who owns Vimeo, and Vimeo OTT, and a bunch of other, I think they might own Final Draft now. I don't remember. But they own a bunch of media tech properties. It would be different if it was someone like that saying, we want to integrate you into our larger ecosystem, or for that matter, Adobe, since they were already mentioned. But but if it's just a angel group or even a VC firm, what are you doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are we doing?
And
it's interesting you bring up Vimeo too, right? Because I think Vimeo is a good kind of cautionary tale in a sense, because Vimeo was beat YouTube. Vimeo was out before YouTube. But Vimeo was a side idea because people were I think it was started by the College Humor people
Was
to
it?
host their, I think so, to host their videos. But it was just we want to kind of do our own video hosting. And so they started Vimeo, launched it, allowed people to use it, but that wasn't where their focus was. Then YouTube came along and just shot right past them. And Vimeo was stuck on their heels going, oh shit, we beat them to market, but we took our eye off the ball.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, that's not even that uncommon, frankly.
Right.
And the growth of YouTube is staggering when it started. Not everybody knows this, and I heard this directly from the founder of YouTube, Chad Hurley, because I was somewhat involved with an event he spoke at. He said that they were actually inches from bankruptcy because of the server hosting costs being so expensive when Google bought them, because video files are huge. And back when this happened, YouTube was gobbling servers. And the only reason they were really able to stay in business was because Google bought them. And Google just had the resources for it, whereas them as a bootstrap startup couldn't afford the growth in server costs. But that's a fun, interesting business story that I like, but I'm not sure it's on brand for this podcast. So maybe
Right.
we should move away.
Right.
The I do have one last question on this, and then we'll move to the final three, which is, how does this affect Premier status? And how do you protect Premier status while using a system like this?
So all of our testers have non-disclosures, so they can't talk about it, they can't post on social, they can't do anything. Um so it is very, it's a very isolated ecosystem. It's hard for someone to get in and see anything. And it's a very short run. Um and a lot of times we're doing a version of the film that will probably never see the light of day. Right. Our higher end packages do allow people to kind of go back with the results, make the tweaks, come back and show it again and kind of do an A/B comparison, but it shouldn't, because we're not doing any public release. No one's paying for it. And no one's going to talk about it.
It's true. I mean, so it falls into the same general camp as a buyer screening in a market, where it's invite only, very limited access, and basically the only people who are there are either acquisitions people from distributors or festival programmers, and that's so that makes sense. But I have a feeling that would have ended up in the comments if we didn't do it now. But you can ask it anyway in the comments. I like comments.
Sure.
So thank you very much for coming on here. This has been a fascinating discussion, Brandon. I'm gonna move to the final three questions I ask all of my guests. I don't know if you watched any of the podcasts before this, but I'm gonna ask you can answer the first question second if you need a second to think about it, because sometimes people do need a second to think about it. But again, no wrong answers. Well, no likely wrong answers. So that first question is, what are your top 3 favorite movies as it stands right this second now? It can change in 5 minutes.
Sure. Top 3 movies right now. I'm gonna have to go with Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings.
Solid choice. Extended or original?
Oh, extended.
Fair enough.
Extended. I just think there's something magical about that movie that's just not there in the other two. I think they're all incredible films, but there's just something about that first movie. I think it's just because it's so pure, right? They had time to adapt and tweak to do the second and third, but the first one was just like, this is our best effort. This is the best crack. And it's just, there's so many incredible things about it. Second and third, boy, I'm just gonna have to go off the top of my head on this. I am gonna go with, this is gonna sound really contrived, but I'm gonna go with 2001: Space Odyssey. I think that is a movie that just gets richer and richer over time. Every time you watch it, at least me, I feel like I get something different out of it. And it just set the standard for so many things to come. Yes, I won't dwell. I could go on for hours about that movie. And then let's see. I would say, all right, I'm just going to go off the top of my head again. I'm going to go with Hereditary.
Okay.
More of just from a viewer experience, I felt, and maybe it was just the timing of when it came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that movie, I went to go see it because a buddy of mine was like, I love horror films, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
But a buddy of mine who he and I text about films all the time went and saw it. He was like, "You need to go see it tomorrow." And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Okay." He's one of those people, right? I think we all have those one or two people. If they say watch it, okay, I'm going to watch it. I fully trust you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just remember going in there, and the marketing for it made it seem like, oh, it's this creepy girl,
Mm-hmm.
family. And I was like, it seems really just like everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that movie it shifts gears so hard and so
Mm-hmm.
fast, and none of it is takes you out of it, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
no there's nothing that seems like a cheap trick, right?
Yeah.
um and just the visuals of that film, and the marriage of the soundtrack to the atmosphere of the film. It's one of those where the music is almost a character, right? and
Mm-hmm.
and I played in bands for 20 years, like high school, college, and a little
Mm-hmm.
bit after. Um and um you know and I was in jazz band in high school, and listening to that movie, I was like, man, what is this? Soundtrack is not like, there is some electronic stuff, but I don't think it is, right? It
Mm-hmm.
sounds. And I went and researched it, and apparently it's like bass clarinets and all these crazy woodwinds. And the guy who did it, Colin Stetson, that's like his thing. He takes these really big wood and brass instruments and uses them and manipulates them. And it was just, so to me, it was just such a surprising film that
Mm-hmm.
really kind of reinvigorated me for, like, okay, maybe horror films are going to start coming back into the style that I like. Because for a while it was very slashery, high
Yeah.
schooly,
Uh,
and I like those films too, but it was just so repetitive.
yeah.
And I felt like that just really hit a big reset for me. But also just in the cinema, just the visuals, the audio, and just the
Mm-hmm.
path that plot takes just blew me away.
That's fantastic. It's yeah, I all three of those are actually first mentions on the podcast, just so you know. When you said contrived, I was worried you were going to say Citizen Kane, and that was nobody. I mean, it is a masterpiece of cinema. It is a
Yes.
masterwork, but it's nobody's favorite movie if you're actually honest.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Anyway, so those are three good picks. Next, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that advice be? And when would you give it to yourself? And don't say buy Bitcoin.
Hmm. I have a funny story about that. I won't get into it here. But I would say, I would go back to myself as an analyst, probably about 4 years in, and get a little personal here, but I went through a pretty dark phase towards the middle of my tenure, I would say, at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just drinking and just stupid self-destructive behaviors, right?
That sounds like every banker I know. So,
It has a tendency to do that, especially
mm-hmm.
when you start learning the things that go on.
Mm-hmm.
But going back and just saying, like, hey man, you're actually going to be able to take a lot of this, and you're going to have a career in film, right? And just kind of go back
Mm-hmm.
to the dark time, right? What are they called? The villain era, Brandon, I think, is what the younger generation call the villain era. Go back to that guy and say, hey man, keep your head down, learn as much of this analytics shit, but
Mm-hmm.
it's going to move on and you're going to be fine. um you know I think that would be my advice. It would be more personal advice to help me kind of mentally and emotionally keep powering forward without resorting to the destructive behaviors that I did.
Well, that's a very honest answer. Thanks for giving it. Yeah, I think it's relatable to a lot of filmmakers because most filmmakers have to have a day job, especially while they're starting, and it can be soul destroying. I've been there. There's a reason I don't sell insurance anymore. But it's important to understand that even if does feel like a crushing job, there are things you'll be able to glean from it, even if it's not something as directly useful as an analyst, even if it's working retail. Clerks never would have been made had Kevin Smith not worked at that store. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can apply knowledge and life experience you get as a filmmaker to your future career, or as a whatever, to your future career as a filmmaker. So, yeah. And then the final question, hardest of the three: where can people find you, and what are you looking for from somebody who might be listening to this podcast?
Sure. So, the best way to get a hold of me is going to be email. Um, you can go to any of the myriad of websites I have and reach me there. We do have social media. I don't really use social media. Trying to get better about it, getting some younger people in to help with that. But wizardrainbow.com is probably the fastest way to get a hold of me. You can email me through there. Filmdom.agency is the sales and distribution side of it, and movietestscreening.com is the testing, the screen testing side of it. And any of the email addresses on there, if it's not directly to me, will get to me quickly.
Cool. That is great, and thank you for not actually saying the email address. And well, really more thank yourself, because that can be problematic, speaking from experience.
Yeah.
So again, Brendan, thank you. This has been a fascinating conversation, and a very and a enlightening one, frankly. So this has been the Movie Moolah podcast. I, as always, am your host, Ben Yenny. If you like this, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell if you're listening on YouTube, or set it to auto download if you're listening anywhere else. And grab my free film resource pack to get an investment deck template, free ebook, white paper, film festival brochure template, and a lot of other goodies at theguerrillarep.com/resources. Thanks very much, and we'll see you again next week.